To give you just a very brief background, the United Nations 2023 Water Conference is the first time in almost 50 years that the UN is organizing a conference about fresh water. And when attending some of the preparatory meetings and calls, I could really grasp the excitement around the conference. In this webinar, we want to give you an overview of what this conference is all about and why it is important, but also highlight it from different perspectives and topics such as youth participation or climate change mitigation, and hear from experts how they will engage on-site in New York. We are really pleased to have such a high interest in this webinar, and in fact, this is just one of the ways we are raising awareness about the conference and help people understand it. And I want to encourage you to sign up for our newsletter, follow us on social media, and check out SIWI.org, where you will find all of our updates around the conference. And today we have several SIWI experts joining us, and all of them will travel to New York and engage in the conference in a couple of weeks. And before we get started, I want to give you a quick overview of what you can expect from this webinar. So we will kick off with a keynote presentation from my colleague, Danny Gaillard-Piché. Danny is an international processes and policy advisor at SIWI. And after that, I will moderate a discussion with 4 SIWI experts, Lourdes Alvarez, Tuve Lexen, Marlin Lundberg, Ingmar Schon, and Martina Klimes. And these conversations will help us to zoom into more specific contexts and understand what our experts will be working for and working on in New York. And to give you just a very brief introduction of their backgrounds, Lourdes is joining us from Bogota and is an expert on water, sanitation, and hygiene. Tove is working both on climate change and sustainable development and is a former youth activist. Marlin has vast experience on landscapes and climate change mitigation. And finally, Martina is also joining us, and she is an expert in water diplomacy and transboundary water cooperation. And in the third segment, it will be time to get answers to whatever questions you might have to our experts. And as you know, we had to change the format of this webinar due to last-minute unforeseeable challenges with Zoom. So instead of a webinar, we are now live streaming on YouTube, and we still want to do our very best to engage with our audience. So we have already received some questions before the call via social media, and we will bring them in. But you can also send us questions during the whole webinar in the live stream chat on YouTube. And my colleague, Maria Gold, from the communications team, will collect them, and we will do our very best to answer them during the Q&A segment. I will now hand over to our keynote speaker, Danny Gaillard-Piché. Danny is probably familiar to many of you as an expert in global processes and international policies, and she joined SIWI about a month ago as advisor, and she will explain to us, amongst other things, what the 2023 conference is, why it is so important, and what outcomes we can expect from it. So Danny, please, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Jacob. It's a pleasure to be here today and to talk about one of my favorite things to talk about right now, the UN 2023 Water Conference. So, you know, just to give a little bit of background and context, this conference initially was born as the midpoint of the Decade for Action. So the Decade for Action was a 10-year period where it was thought that more needed to be done to go further faster. And so there's this Decade of Action that was created, and this event is the midpoint of that decade to sort of take stock to say, okay, well, how far have we come in the decade and how far do we still have to go? It's been such a success. It has blossomed, and it has actually grown so that now, in addition to the 3-day conference, there is an entire week of water events surrounding this. There are thousands of people that have signed up to attend, and that's something that the UN has never seen before. So I think that the lesson to take away from that is the time is right to talk about water issues and to make change happen. This is only the second time in the history of the UN that there is a dedicated conference to discuss water within the UN system. So on the one hand, we can ask, why is that? But on the other hand, we really want to seize this moment to create momentum and buy-in for collective action around water and sanitation, of course. Let's not forget sanitation. So this is really a moment to come together and to figure out how to accelerate action. We have 5 years left on the decade. We have 7 years left on the SDGs. But basically the message is we're not going fast enough. And we need to increase or accelerate the impact of what we're doing at least by 5 times in order to reach the SDGs. For me, personally, what I find the most interesting aspect of this conference is that it is a moment to increase the political priority for water and to mobilize people around that cause. We need to enhance political priority for water to make sure that water becomes grows up the agenda of ministers and of people that are involved in government and all of the people associated in making delivering water services better, because all other progress is actually dependent on the availability of water. You can't reach any of the SDGs if you don't fix the water problem first. And so I think for me, what I'm hoping to come out of this is that there will be a fostered leadership and political champions that can be vocal about the importance of water for sustainability and for resilience. I know I only have 5 minutes, so I'm going to try and go quicker. Just to mention that there are 3 guiding principles to this conference. The first one being it is inclusive. Everybody's voices needs to be heard. It is cross-sectoral, so we need to raise awareness for how important water is for achieving all of the other goals, like those for health, the environment, climate, food, energy, and also the fact that the water is not the end point. It's not an end in itself. It's a means for achieving these other goals. And finally, the third principle is that it needs to be action-oriented. We've all had enough talk. We want to move it into action. And that gives rise to the creation of what is called the Water Action Agenda, which is a set of game-changing commitments and coalitions to ensure that progress is made. This is an event, but it doesn't stop here. The follow-up process is just as important as the event itself, and how we link these moments in time to continue to build on each other across the year, whether it be the HLPF, whether it be the World Water Week, whether it be the SDG Summit or COP28. We really need to think of that as in terms of stepwise action at building on each other. And finally, who needs to do this? Well, the simple answer is that we all have a shared responsibility to act and create influence for the cause of water. This conference is going to be what we all make of it. So let's try and make the best. Thanks so much, Jacob.
Thanks so much, Danny, and actually perfectly on time. And I think this gives a very great understanding of the opportunities of the conference that it brings to us to really accelerate action, but also of the meaning of this conference, just that it's taking place in general. And personally, I can really sign what you said. I think I really hope that this conference brings also increased awareness, because so many challenges we're facing right now are somehow water related, but so are their solutions. And this is something that SIWI has been advocating for a long time. And I think we really must change mindsets and create an understanding for how we manage and basically treat water resources will influence a lot how we overcome global challenges, and that this can help us on sustainable development, climate change, biodiversity, etc. So mainstreaming this understanding will help us a lot. I'm now joined by 4 SIWI experts and very pleased to welcome Lourdes Alvarez Tuvelexen, Malin Lundberg Ingmarsson, and Martina Klimas. And we'll have a conversation on what they will be focusing on site in New York. And they will share their expertise and their expectations with us. And first, I would like to turn to you, Lourdes Alvarez. Lourdes, you are an expert on water, sanitation, and hygiene. So what do you expect of the conference?
Thank you. Thank you for your question, and welcome everyone to this session. Definitely this conference, it's an outstanding opportunity to catalyze efforts to achieve the SDG 6, and as Danny was saying, all other goals related with safe access to water and sanitation services for all. It's also an important political arena to highlight some of the concerning issues in the water sector, but chiefly to discuss solutions and joint efforts to face water challenges at the global scales without forgetting also the local context. It is not only about water and sanitation, but also about climate, about gender, about social protection. Everything is connected. Financing, coordination, planning, and overall ensuring water governance is essential to ensure a water-wise world. In New York, we are going to be not only government representatives, but also organizations and civil society. And I think we all have a great opportunity to make a difference as a whole.
Thanks so much, Lourdes, for this, and several words that really stuck with me, including solutions-oriented, but also really thinking with the local context in mind is something that I think one hears just so much these days. I wondered, you're part of SIWI's Bogota office, and what would you say is the most important water issue facing Latin America right now?
Talking about water and sanitation in Latin America, we could highlight problems of very different nature. One of the most pressing challenges in the region and actually in the global area, it's the limited access to basic sanitation, especially in vulnerable contexts such as informal settlements, rural areas, and indigenous communities. Access to sustainable and resilient water services, ensuring quality and affordability of the services is also critical. It's a critical challenge for the achievement of the human right to water and sanitation. And finally, it's important in the region, but not only in this region, but we cannot forget that all these challenges happen in a very complex political and social context, with political instability in some countries and social conflicts such as violence against environmental defenders and indigenous communities, indigenous groups. We have a long way to go to overcome these challenges. And I really think, and I really believe that the UN conference, it's a great opportunity to move forward together to achieve these goals in the water sector.
Thanks so much, Lourdes, for sharing these insights with us. Next, I would like to turn to my colleague, Tuve Lexen. Tuve, you're part of SIWI's international policy team and frequently participate in these type of high-level events. So I've been wondering, what will be your role during the United Nations 2023 conference?
Thank you so much, Jacob, and thank you for inviting me to this session. So I will have several roles. One of them is leading the engagements of SIWI in certain side event sessions. So one of them is, or two of them are actually happening inside the UN headquarters on the Friday, the 24th. One is with the NoNet group on promoting private-public partnerships for fulfilling SDG 6 and climate actions. And another is together with EcoShape, WWF, FNORD, Conservation International, among others, on blue financing for nature-based solutions for water security and disaster risk reduction. But I'm also leading the work on an interactive intergenerational event at New York Water Week, which we organized together with FNORD, the Valuing Water Initiative, IHE Delft, among others. And I think this is the most exciting thing that I'm doing at the conference in New York Water Week, because it's meant to be creative and kind of deviate a little bit from the usual format with panels and speakers and so on. We want this event to really get to the point of how we can unpack structures of how we can work intergenerationally and therefore take the next step for inclusive participation in decision-making by presenting a model that can be applied to other sessions and contexts. And this also relates to my larger purpose at the UN Water Conference, which is to monitor youth and gender perspectives. And as Danny already said, inclusion is one of the cross-cutting themes of the Water Conference. So this is very important. It is very important that we bring everyone to the table, both from a justice point of view, but also because of the additional crucial insights that this brings. It can lead to more informed and thereby also more efficient decision-making and practice.
Thanks so much, Tuve. Sounds like a busy week coming up. And you already mentioned bringing everyone to the table and that this conference really wants to be inclusive. So I wondered, do you have any message to the delegations preparing to attend the UN Water Conference?
Yes, I think my first message is that meaningful participation is very important. It is a campaign going on right now that is called 30-30-30, which says that 30% of young people should be in decision-making positions and they should be under 30 years old by 2030. And I think this campaign is very good because it highlights the importance of including youth in the real work, in the decision-making processes. And of course, having a youth speaker in your event is a good start, but meaningful participation is more than a one-off event thing. It is a consistent matter where young people are included in, for instance, the delegations to the UN meetings or participate in the senior management meetings that decide the strategy of the organizations at meetings such as the UN 2023 Water Conference. And from a gender perspective, the same approach is equally important. Include women and underrepresented groups in delegations and strategic work, and make sure to invite them to your events. And also when including underrepresented groups to events, it's important to make sure that they can participate by providing means that makes this possible. And this can include financial or administrative support for participation, such as accreditation or accommodation or travel finances. And in the actual event, it's also important that these representatives are part of the most crucial component of the discussion, so that they are invited to the same discussions as those that usually participate in those.
Thanks so much, Tuve. Fully agree, and I hope that the intergenerational dialogue maybe brings some interesting discussions also on this topic. Next up, I would like to turn to Malin Lundberg Ingmarsson. Malin, just like Tuve, you were at the climate meeting, the COP27 in November, where you presented the first overview of the role of water for climate change mitigation. Will you follow up on that work at the UN 2023 Water Conference?
Thanks so much, Jacob, and hi, everyone. Yes, absolutely. So this report that we launched at COP27 end of last year on climate mitigation links to freshwater, we will continue to communicate these messages at a number of different sessions in New York. And in New York, it's especially the messaging around integrated approaches that will be in focus. Because we really need to move away from the siloed approaches and recognize the systemic and connected nature of water and climate. And in the report, we highlight the need to work with integrated approaches, for example, to avoid risks and utilize opportunities. And this is a way to achieve double wins, where we promote the benefits from both climate and water. And one great example of this is the source to sea approach that we are working on a lot here at SIWI. In that approach, we are assessing upstream and downstream relationships and implications for resource management across all relevant sectors. So it's a very inclusive way of working.
Excellent. Thanks so much. And also thanks for giving an example. I was just about to ask you, could you say, I know it's a massive report and it was a massive undertaking, but what is the maybe most important thing or takeaway people should know about water and climate change?
Yes, big question, Jacob, but I would say that water and climate, they are so closely interlinked, and this is something that everyone should know. For example, most climate actions, no matter if it's mitigation or adaptation or for resilience, most of them can only be successful if we take water into consideration, both in the planning process and in the implementation process. And something that we stress a lot in the report is that there exist so many freshwater related synergies as well as trade-offs between climate mitigation and climate adaptation. And this is, we can be so much more effective or efficient in our climate work if we take this into account. And there are also many of these freshwater related synergies and trade-offs between climate action and functioning ecosystems, or enhanced biodiversity, or contributions to sustainable development. So here we again come back to the integrated approaches, and by making informed policy and management decisions, our actions can have much more profound impact.
Super interesting. And I think if you attend any climate change conference right now, you will always hear about we need to use those measures that have impact on several ends, right? That have win-wins and so on. So incredibly important knowledge. Last but not least, I want to turn to Martina Klimes. Martina, you are an expert in water diplomacy and transboundary water cooperation. And with this background, what will you be doing at the UN 2023 Water Conference?
Thank you for inviting me, and I would like to thank my colleagues from SIWI for organizing this interesting event, and thank you for the question, Jakob. I think I will be, as well as my other colleagues from the transboundary community, be championing transboundary water cooperation. SIWI is a proud member of something called Transboundary Water Cooperation Coalition that was actually started at the last World Water Week, and it's an initiative spearheaded by the UNECE. And we have about 70 members, including about 50 countries and 20 international organizations, academia, civil society. And in this Transboundary Water Cooperation Coalition, we work on promoting transboundary water cooperation in the water action agenda, because we know that we feel that we do need to work on creating momentum for this important field. We feel that without the promoting cooperation, because cooperation is looking into synergies between the political and technical tracks, helping politicians to make decisions based on science, decisions based on data. And this is what we are striving for, and we would like to see more of these voluntary commitments focused on transboundary water cooperation. So SIWI is a proud member, and we actually had a very interesting webinar last Monday, and it's recorded. It was led by UN ESCWA. So if you look at their websites, you can maybe find recording of this webinar and learn more about the work of the coalition and the commitments. And the other thing I will be really focusing on, we actually have a very interesting event led by the Swedish Ministry for Foreign Affairs, and where we work together with our colleague from SIPRI, Stockholm International Peace Research Institute, and also our colleagues from the government of Somalia. And we will be looking into why some countries for some countries, it's very easy to make these commitments on transboundary water cooperation, but for other countries, they're very hesitant to make these commitments. And we would like to better understand why and really give them the space to explain, because maybe the framing is wrong. Transboundary water cooperation in some regions is very sensitive. It's a matter of national security. And we really would like to give the space to everyone to have the ability to explain why these issues matter so much and why they are important for, reaching all the objectives of the conference.
Thanks so much, Martina. And what better opportunity to really gather momentum probably than this conference. So very excited to follow and hear what you will say after this conference. I would like to ask you also, at a time when geopolitical tensions are growing, how can we leverage water cooperation as a tool for conflict prevention?
Thank you, Jakob. I think that we always say that water is also an opportunity for cooperation. It can be an entry point for dialogue. The discussion has to be very nuanced because it's extremely context specific. In some countries, for example, like Iraq and Iran, they have excellent cooperation on political and security issues, but we see less cooperation on water issues. While other countries, we do see more advancement on water cooperation and less advancement on other political or other strategic issues. So we really would like to think about this in terms of how do we work across sectors. And I think many of my colleagues mentioned it here, the importance of including other sectors. And especially from our field, we see it as essential, engaging sectors beyond the water, beyond the usual suspects. We would like to see more, for example, institutes dealing with foreign policy, with security, with defense, also institute more focusing on different types of humanitarian action, to be more engaged in this conference and to really be talking to different colleagues and different people from the water community. So for us, this is really focusing on working across different sectors, because then we believe that for conflict prevention, we can really pick up on all these early warning mechanisms, because then we have a much more holistic understanding of different conflicts and different contexts. So we also see it as our mission to really bring this conference to outside of the water sector, to really raise the awareness about this important event.
Excellent. Thank you so much. I would now like to ask a question to all four of you, and very curious to hear your answers, because I think this question is incredibly relevant and everyone is very interested to hear. How optimistic do you feel ahead of the UN 2023 Water Conference, and what do you expect it to achieve? And perhaps starting with you, Lourdes.
Thank you, Jacob. I think we must be optimistic. It's our energy and it's the commitment of all of us that will make this conference, and not only this conference, but the rest of the conference and the meetings and the opportunities that we have during this year and the next years to be able to achieve the common goals. So I hope and I expect to have real commitments from countries, and from not only from countries, but also from the other organizations and civil society that will participate in the UN Water, so we can work together to achieve our goals.
Excellent. Thanks so much. Turning next to Tuva.
I mean, I can only agree with Lourdes. I think it's really important the water action agenda, and I think here it also should have some recognition for that. It is more comprehensive than is usually the case at UN meetings. All stakeholders are encouraged to make commitments, and thereby we can hopefully transform the world in a way that is also how the world looks like right now, that we have actors that are non-state actors, but that still are very important to have in this transformation. But I think it's also important to keep in mind that this is just one conference, and one conference cannot on its own steer the world right, but hopefully this can create this real momentum that we can then use to proceed forward. And I think here other meetings, not the least the World Water Week, are important checking points where the momentum can be kept and commitments can be advanced. So from a realistic point of view, I'm quite optimistic.
Wonderful. Malin, you're next.
Thanks, Jacob. I am absolutely optimistic. This puts such a big light on the water, this resource that is so crucial to all life on Earth. And I'm a biologist by training, and this is a way, as Martina also highlighted, that this is a way to bring in water into other sectors, or to make other sectors think about water. And I'm involved in some sessions in New York where we bring the forest sector into the water world, so to say. So we highlight the important links between forests and water. And I'm sure that this is happening for many other or all other important issues that we are working on. That makes me so optimistic that this trickles out into many other sectors.
Excellent. And again, last but not least, Martina, please, your thoughts.
I would say I'm only cautiously optimistic because as a political scientist, I try to be a little bit careful in my predictions. But for me, important is what happens after the conference. In peace studies or peace sector, we say that the peace is 10% is the agreement, but 90% is the implementation. So here we will see a lot of commitments and we will see a lot of statements and we will, there will be a great momentum, there will be excellent atmosphere. But what happens after? Will all these commitments and promises and discussion, will that be implemented? Will there be a real follow-up? What will really happen? Can we really walk the talk? And I think that is really also up to us. How do we, that we don't really see the conference as the end goal. This is only really just the beginning. So I think that is extremely important to really think about the implementations of all these commitments and promises and discussions.
Thank you so much, and wonderful to just hear all your different insights and kind of agree with all of them. And with this, I will conclude this part of our webinar and pass over the word to Maria Schöld, who will now lead a Q&A section with our speakers. Maria, please.
Thank you so much, Jacob, and everyone. This has really been so interesting to listen to. We have, of course, invited everyone to share questions that we will then ask to our experts here today. So we do that through social media, but it's also still possible to ask questions. So if you have something on your mind, please put it in the YouTube and in the chat function underneath where this is live stream, and we try to bring you an answer. So we're going to start with questions that we have had beforehand. And one that I think many people are interested in is how the UN Water Conference is related to other processes that are going on. So I would like actually to ask this first to Danny. For example, the COP28 climate conference happening later this year. What is the connection between the UN Water Conference happening in March and the COP28 happening later this year? If you please could elaborate on that. Thank you.
Yeah. So this has been being discussed in recent months because there is the perception that many of these processes do not feed into each other and sort of go along parallel tracks. What I would suggest, so where is climate in the UN 2023 conference? Climate is actually situated as one of the themes of Interactive Dialogue 3. So there are 4 interactive dialogues, and the third one is on the environment, climate, and disaster risk reduction. So climate has quite a small space within the overall conference. That said, I think almost everyone is going to refer to climate as something that exacerbates everything. And so I think climate references will sort of permeate the entire conference. So there are a couple things that I would say that I would suggest would be important to keep an eye on. First of all, what are the outcomes of Interactive Dialogue 3, specifically related to climate? Because each of the interactive dialogues will have a summary attached to it. So it'll be interesting to see what comes out of those discussions. More importantly, however, I think we'll have to look very specifically at the climate commitments that will be registered in the Water Action Agenda. And we don't know exactly what that's going to look like yet. Very often, those commitments or the water community has a tendency to speak with a water voice or a water lexicon. That vocabulary is unfamiliar to climate people. So one of the important things is to look at water from a climate point of view. So what we can do to try and facilitate that understanding is to sort of gather all of the climate commitments, the climate outcomes of the conference, and to package them and to work on the language in a way that's going to be comprehensible to the people who are attending the COP, the party negotiators, et cetera. And we have other moments during the year to do that. For me, I think the SP58, which is the intersessional meeting in between every COP meeting in June in Bonn, will be a really important moment to sort of take stock of what came out of 2023 in terms of climate, and to discuss with parties, well, okay, here's what's happening in the water space. Is this useful for you? What are your needs? How can we, as a water community, respond to those needs so that water is more present in your climate commitments? And then we still have a few more months left to work together, you know, under the sort of chapeau of the Water for Climate Pavilion and the group of actors that are contributing to that effort, before we get to the COP28 in November. So those are sort of the main stepping stones that I see on the road. Thanks.
Thank you, Danny. Just to clarify, many of you may not be familiar with the Water and Climate Pavilion, for example, that you mentioned. Could you describe a little bit what that is?
Yeah, so it's really, so 2 years ago when the COP was being planned for in Glasgow, there was a desire for the water community to come together and speak with one voice for water within the COPs, rather than everyone doing their own things in their own corner. It was a huge success. It was very organic. It grew up from these people that just wanted to work together so that water had a more prominent place in climate discussions. The first water pavilion was a huge success, and that continued in COP 27 in Egypt. And so the idea is that there is a place where the water community can meet and together and share and learn, but also can reach out to climate actors, understand UNFCCC mechanisms, which are extremely complicated. And so there is a desire to keep this community going and keep the energy high as we move into the next COP and beyond.
Thank you so much, Danny. I really like this idea of sort of translating between different audiences and sectors and different processes to sort of like bring them together. I thought that was really powerful. Another example of that is actually the next question, because I hear a lot of people are a little bit curious about the New York Water Week. And I know that Tuve was alluded to earlier also that there's more things happening at the same time. There's not only the UN Water Conference happening in March, but the New York Water Week may not be as familiar yet with as the UN conference. I'm very happy that with us today we actually have Lisa Hartog, who is the woman behind the New York Water Week, to sort of help us explain or help us understand a little bit more what the New York Water Week is. May I hand over to you, Lisa, if you could sort of walk us through what this is?
Yes, of course. Thank you so much, Maria, and thank you everybody for being here this afternoon. It's great to see all your faces, because I'm so working on the process of the Water Week that I sometimes forget about the content. And like you all stated that, like Danny also stated, the water pavilion and the climate developments are so important for this conference, but also the follow-up. So it's good to hear some content. Today I had also earlier a conversation with the United Nations Disaster Risk Reduction Organization, who was actually part of Interactive Dialogue 3. And yeah, so that's good that that's happening too, because I'm totally busy with another thing, that is the Water Week, which will happen from 18th to 24th of March. And SIWI has been a great partner in this, developing also our communication work. So yeah, that's great. What will happen in the week is that next to the UN headquarters and everything what's happening there with the 200 side events over there, it will be crazy busy, but a lot of people are also seeking a place outside the venue. And the week is there to bring those stakeholders from all over the world together. And we're working together with the City of New York. They are our co-host. So the City of New York actually is also organizing a lot of events on water, on resilience, on cities. And that is something really important about the week, that we have 3 teams. The first team is water innovation and businesses. The second team is resilient cities. And the third theme is youth and education. I also heard Tove already speaking about youth and education. And if we're talking about walk the talk, then, well, the youth is the one who has to walk to our future. So that's really important. We start in the weekend already with a low profile program with Mina Guni running into the New York Water Week. So everybody who is in New York already on Saturday, bring your running gear or step on a bike. We have 30 bikes and join us for that run. There is a film festival on the Brazilian cities on Saturday, but also a film festival on Sunday. It's the World Water Film Festival, and it's happening at Columbia University. On Monday we have. Sorry.
But as I understand that there are also things happening online, right? So people who may
yes,
not
there are
be
also
in New York,
happenings
they
online. You can everybody can register on our website, newyorkwaterweek.com and nywaterweek.com, and you can even there we have an event from Kenya, but we also have an event from here in the Netherlands that are going on and they're organizing. So if you register, will become part of the program, and then we can use those for PR purposes. So that is also really important if you want it. Yeah.
Great. Thank you so much. We'll make sure to pop the link to the New York Water Week as well in the chat.
That's good. Yeah, and then you can see the rest of the program. Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you so much for talking to us about this. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
We have also received a question about water and sanitation. If maybe Lourdes would like to help us a little bit describing what the solutions are when it comes to water and sanitation.
That's a big question, talking about solutions, definitely. In terms of solutions, I think we can work from different sides, right? So we normally, when we talk about water and sanitation challenges, we talk about technology and access, but that is important, but also we need to bring the water governance into place. We need to create an enable environment that allows us to ensure the access to sustainable and resilient services. So we are talking about planning, about financing, about social norms, about coordination. So I think that's something important where SIWI it's just adding a lot of effort to support and to support countries to develop or to reinforce this water governance. Innovation, it's also key, not only technical innovation, but also governance innovation, institutional innovation. So we need to be very creative to be able to face challenges in the water sector and thinking on these vulnerable communities that we always have this last mile that we are always trying to focus on our work, like, as I said before, informal settlements, rural areas, peri-urban areas, indigenous communities. So there's a lot of points of view and a lot of points of joint forces that we need to develop to get to that, to solve these challenges.
Great, thank you so much. And especially for raising that innovation can be so many different things. I think that's a very important point to make. I think that we have time for one more question now. We have one about climate change and water, and especially how climate change adaptation will be addressed in the UN Water Conference. I don't know if maybe that is something that Malin would like to talk about, or anyone else wants to jump in.
Was it the interest of climate adaptation in the UN Water Conference? Did
Yes.
I hear you correctly? Yes. Sure. Thanks, Maria. I think that there will definitely be a lot of focus on climate adaptation there. And this is me only guessing, but this is a little bit echoing what I said before, that more than that, it's focus on bringing the climate work together to see the synergies between mitigation, adaptation, and resilience, because there are so many solutions that address all of those, or at least two of those. And by identifying those solutions and identifying that it's a way of how would you say, making greater impact. So I think that here with water as so closely linked to climate, it will be raising the bigger picture.
Great, thank you so much. So that is a trend we should be sort of looking for, that is becoming more and more linked between the mitigation and adaptation, and less maybe divided as it used to be.
Yeah, I see it as that. Yes, thanks.
Anyone else who want to add to that or have an opposing view or something? I guess I'm going to hand it back to Jacob for some concluding remarks. Thank you so much, everyone.
Excellent. Thank you, Maria, and thank you everyone for these insights into the 2023 conference from your different perspectives, but also the updates on New York Water Week. Lisa, thank you so much. Very much appreciated. And yeah, you pointed to it. It is a very busy year with UN 2023, New York Water Week, the Bonn Climate Change Conference, the High Level Political Forum, World Water Week, the SDG Summit, COP28, and so on. And the pressure to deliver results is incredibly high. And there is a strong wish to bring water forward as a solution to the global water challenges we are facing. And one thing that was mentioned really resonated with me, that are these guiding principles on being action-oriented, being inclusive, being cross-sectoral. And I think they really pick on something that many people wish for right now. And what became very clear to me during this webinar is that this conference is not an end point, but must be a starting point. And what matters is the follow-up and how we can keep the momentum going. We as SIWI are eager to contribute to this. And one way we want to do this is through our very own World Water Week, which has been the world's leading water conference for a long time now. And World Water Week has the dedicated aim to unite the world for water. And going forward, we offer World Water Week as a platform to follow up on their water action agenda, where actors can meet year after year and really ramp up hands-on collaboration on the agenda, and to keep the principles of cross-sectoral, inclusive, and action-oriented going. On site in New York, SIWI delegation will strongly engage both at New York Water Week and the 2023 conference. And if you want to follow us on this journey, I encourage you to do so. Follow us on social media and sign up to our newsletter. But also here you can see the picture of siwi.org, where you can find a guide to the conference. You can follow all SIWI updates and so on. So we have created a landing page where you can find everything you need to know basically about what SIWI will be doing in the coming weeks. This spring, SIWI is also organizing a webinar series where we dive into the chapters of the recently launched report, The Essential Drop to Reach Net Zero, Unpacking Freshwater's Role in Climate Change Mitigation. And the first two webinars already took place. In case you missed them, you can rewatch them on our YouTube channel. And the next webinar is on 16th of March and will highlight potential mitigation measures and water-related risks in freshwater ecosystems. And you're most welcome to register and join. Lastly, I want to thank all the speakers and all the participants who joined us. I'm now even more excited about the conference than I was before. And I also want to thank Cecile and Marlon, who were not active as speakers, but have done tremendous work in the background to make this webinar possible. So as a last sentence, thank you all for joining us, and hopefully see you soon in